So it's once again that time of year. San Diego Comic-Con has come and gone, and all the biggest news in pop culture seem to happen over the weekend. That can only mean one thing. It's time for what seems to be a yearly installation of Drew's News and a roundup of San Diego Comic-Con 2019. Let's get into it. There was a lot of stuff to cover from the weekend of San Diego Comic-Con, so to start us off with, we got a first look at the new series of Star Trek Picard. Now, this first proper glimpse into the series gave us a little bit of a better idea of what fans can be looking for out of this series. Now, while this is going to be happening alongside Star Trek Discovery, which is its own completely original Star Trek series still airing on Netflix, Star Trek Picard looks like something that has been made entirely with the fans of Star Trek in mind. So if you've been jonesing for a little bit of Star Trek nostalgia, but the films aren't quite doing it for you, maybe this is right up your street. The convention also opened up with a new announcement from Netflix showing their first look into their The Witcher series, starring Henry Cavill, adapted from the best-selling video game series. A lot of the fans were originally a little bit on the fence about whether this series should even be made, whether Henry Cavill could really pull off the look of Geralt of Rivia, and of course whether the series was even going to manage to be a success at all. But after losing their rights to their Marvel properties, this series does now look like it could be a mainstay for Netflix, along with such series as Stranger Things. Not to be outdone though, HBO released a second and more in-depth trailer for their Watchmen series. This could quite possibly be in response to other services like Amazon Prime and the DC Universe streaming service releasing first looks of series like The Boys and Titans. Interestingly though, this Watchmen series does seem to be a completely original series set after the events of the original graphic novel and the film. So, what does this series have in store for fans? It seems like only time will tell. As well as all of this, DC had a slew of glimpses into their future projects, including announcing that both Titans and Doom Patrol are returning for second seasons, as well as a sizzle reel of the next seasons of all of the CW shows in their Arrowverse universe. And while there was no real announcements or views of any future film properties coming out from DC, including Wonder Woman 84 or Birds of Prey, they did manage to show a first look trailer into their R-rated Harley Quinn animated series airing on the DC Universe streaming service later this year. And this series is set to be quite the crowd pleaser for any fans of the Clown Princess of Crime, as the voice cast looks pretty good, the animation looks quite impressive, and it's also R-rated, which means they'll probably be getting away with a whole heap of stuff. And without further ado, onto the biggest announcements of the weekend. Everyone was pretty suspicious that Marvel Studios would be staying relatively quiet on their properties until the D23 convention in August, but they managed to surprise an entire audience at their Hall H presentation by announcing a lot of properties coming out in their Marvel Phase 4 of their cinematic universe. Hold on to your seats, people. This is about to get very real. Now, this presentation really stole the show, and with good reason, because after Spider-Man Far From Home, the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe was relatively questionable. We knew about a few properties that were coming out, but no real details until now. 6 films and 5 original series are all set to take place during the Marvel Phase 4 of their cinematic universe over the next few years. So, let's go through them property by property. Coming out early next year, we have Black Widow in her first standalone film, something fans have been eager for since the debut of this character. Now, this film takes place just after Civil War. It will focus on Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, fighting her own battles, and may give a little bit more of a glimpse into the history of her character. There are already rumors that the villain of this piece is set to be Taskmaster, which I personally am quite excited about. Next up on the slate for next year is The Eternals, which we already knew about being in production, but at San Diego Comic-Con, they did release a bigger cast list for the film, had a few more reveals over which characters are going to be there, and an official release date for the film. As for exactly what we can expect from this film and where it sits in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that still has yet to be seen. After that, we have Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Now, Shang-Chi, aka the Master of Kung Fu, is a property that I personally am very interested in seeing. This does look like a property that could be somewhere along the lines of a proper Iron Fist style martial arts movie, but with proper casting this time. And the Legend of the Ten Rings does imply there could be a return of the real Mandarin. After that, we had the announcement of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, the potential for this property does open up a lot of questions. Could this actually be the foray into the multiverse that we were expecting from Spider-Man Far From Home? If not, could it open up a lot of supernatural possibilities for the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? And the fact that Elizabeth Olsen was revealed to be part of the lineup of the cast for this film implies that it could be a little bit of a team up between Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch. So, definitely something strange is afoot. After that, we got a big announcement of Thor 4, aka Thor Love and Thunder. Now, the biggest announcements about this film was not only that Taika Waititi would be returning as the director for this film, and that this would take place before Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but Taika Waititi fully intends to introduce a female Thor in the form of Natalie Portman raising the hammer of Thor. Now, this is adapted straight out of the recent series of comic books where Jane Foster did take on the mantle of Thor, so this looks set to be the next logical step for taking that character. As for what will happen with Thor, actual Odin's son, and one of the biggest surprise announcements of the panel was when Mahershala Ali took to the stage and announced that he would be taking on the mantle of Marvel's Blade. Now, this is quite the double-edged sword for fans, because on the one hand, it's incredibly exciting that Marvel Studios are tackling the character of Blade in either a series or a film, but the specifics of that weren't exactly made clear. It is also a little bit of a shame that Wesley Snipes will not be reprising his role from the original Blade trilogy that came out in the early 2000s. But if we're all being honest, Mahershala Ali is a fantastic actor and not a bad choice for playing Blade, and I, for one, am quite excited to see where that franchise leads. As for the 5 series that got announced for the Disney Plus streaming service, available from November this year, in the coming years you can expect to see series such as The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, which we already knew about being in production and is set to be a prequel / back-in-time series, featuring Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany reprising their roles as Scarlet Witch and the Vision. A Loki standalone series, which will take place after the events of Endgame, when we saw Loki disappear with the Tesseract. A Hawkeye series, which will introduce the character of Kate Bishop, Hawkeye's main protege, and one of the Young Avengers lineup. And lastly, an animated Marvel What If series. Now, this series is going to be incredibly interesting. It features Jeffrey Wright as the voice of the Watcher, who will go into detail about alternative events that could have happened during the timeline of the Marvel Universe and how that might have affected the universe as we know it. Now, this is actually based off of a property of Marvel comic books that actually detail different events in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that led to characters taking a very drastic turn, and what could have happened to the entire universe after that. So, this is definitely going to be an interesting series to look out for. Now, the big question for the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 4 is whether this is the entire lineup of Phase 4 or whether this is just part of it. Now, 6 films did get announced, but there's no real culmination of these films. There's no real kind of big event to round off the Phase 4. So that does beg the question whether something else is going to get announced that will bring these films together, or whether this is a lead up into something bigger happening in Phase 5 in the future. But I'm almost certain that we will get more details on these properties and far more at the D23 event later this year. But in the meantime, that about wraps it up for the news coming out of San Diego Comic-Con 2019. So, what was your favorite announcement of the weekend? What are you most excited to see? And is there any news that I missed in this roundup that you would have liked to have seen that maybe flew under the radar? All comments are welcome in the comments section below. Let's talk nerdy. As always, if you've enjoyed what you've seen here and you would like to see some more, you can click right here to subscribe and see some more funky fresh videos from yours truly. And until that point, if San Diego was even half as sweaty as it is right now where I am very glad that I saw all of this news from the comfort of behind my laptop screen, because whew, it's hot. It's hot.